Okay, so welcome again to the Torah of the Earth, and this is a series on each one of the elements in nature, and it's part of the Pearlstone online offerings, and you can see the rest of them on pearlstonecenter.org/online with all the other sessions and classes that are there, and this series, which is the Torah classes, you can pearlstonecenter.org/Torah, and it has all of these classes. Hello. It's good to see you, Josh. Hello, everybody. This session will stand alone. It doesn't have to be in connection to any of the other ones, but we've already covered earth and wind and fire. So this is the last one, which is water. And in some ways, it's maybe the first one. Because in the way that the Torah describes these primordial characters, the water is in a sense first. But in the year starts off with spring, which you can define as earth, and then fire, and then air, and then water. So the very bottom of the year would be the depth of the water. But I'm going to go to the source sheet, and if anyone has questions, you can just put it into the chat. I think I'll share my screen. Here we go. Can you give me a thumbs up if you see the screen share? Okay, great. Okay. So like each one of these sessions, I started with the Shir Shirim, which is the Song of Songs, which is the book inside of the Torah, of the written Torah, Chaim. In the book inside of the written Torah, which is called the Holy of Holies, it's a book, it's a love poem, and that's source number 2. But source number 1 is the first description of creation in the creation story in the Torah. It says, "V'ha'aretz haisasahu v'vahu v'choshech al pnei sahom v'ruach Elokim me'achafes al pnei hamayim." And earth was total chaos, and darkness was over the face of the primordial deep, and the ruach, meaning the breath of the Creator, was hovering over the surface of the waters. So right there you have the description of the earliest moment of to describe creation. And there's something called water that's already there, right? It's already there. That water is not the waters that shows up in the second day, but this is like primordial water. I'm going to stop the screen share. And I'm going to share another screen. And this one is a little picture of primordial creation. Can you see that?
You can only see the top half of it for some reason. There you go.
That's me. Do you see it? Is that good? Thank you. So I'm going to run through the story of creation, and I'm going to do it really quickly. The first outer egg is in the beginning, the earth was tohu vavohu, it was chaotic and void, which is this primordial waters where everything is dreamlike, everything is in potential, nothing is created yet. It's the place where you go to in dreams. It's the place where new ideas are formed. It's the dark place where you close your eyes and dream up something. It's the pre-creation, pre-creative space. But the first thing that says is let there be light, and it creates the distinction between day and night, between light and darkness. And that's day one. Day two is another cut, which is like another womb, which is the making the separation between the sky and the sea. And day three is the separation between the earth and the vegetation. Then day four is the creatures that live in the night and the day. They get inserted into day one. Day five is the birds and the fish. They get inserted into day two, which is the sea and the sky. And day six is the people and the animals, and they're the beings that live inside of the earth and the vegetation. So it's a little description of the stages, and not stages of just time, as in days, but the stage on which life is playing out. The act of life is playing out on these three stages, and it's like a description of the natural world. And each one of these aspects of the natural world are described as linguistic communication to us. So the fact that life is this way, and this is a description, this is life. You know, we live on a little rock with some vegetation, and there's clouds, and there's birds, and there's fish, and there's the sea and sky, and there's these light beings in night and in the day, and that it's repetitive, and this is what life is in its essence, is like a continual communication. So just letting people in. The earliest moment there is in this bottom part, which is the depth and the darkness of creation. And it's to that place that existence crumbles back to. Existence returns all the time. Existence always goes back to these places. It goes back to the night. It goes back to the sea. It goes back into the ground. So the life and the animals and the plants that emerge out of the earth here, they go back into the earth. And all the things that sprout out from all of this, including the earth, is always constantly slipping back into the sea. And everything that is existing and is being and is seen and has definition and is experienced is always slipping back into the night, slipping back into non-existence. And that's the sort of the will to be, to the desire to be, which is this bottom part, and then the will to become, which is reaching this top part. So if you imagine all of creation as a singular image, you have the heat and the fire on top, and the water on the bottom, and the mist moving around in between by the interaction of these two forces. In a natural sense, you have fire and water, but in a metaphoric sense, which is deeper than just like a metaphor, because it's the thing itself, you have potential and primordial potential, and then what will actually be. So let me see. I just wanted to get a chance to review that. Okay, and now I'm going to go back to the source. So in Shir Shirim, thank you, back to the sources. That was a pun. Thank you, Gabrielle, for chatting that. I didn't even know. It's eventually going to go back to the source anyways. So The Shir Shem says, "Let me be a seal upon your heart, like a seal upon your hand. For love is fierce as death, and passion is as mighty as Sheol. Its darts are darts of fire, a blazing flame. Many waters cannot quench this love, nor rivers drown it. And if a man was offered all his wealth for love, he would be laughed at." So this is it's a description of life with the love on top and the death and Sheol and water on the bottom, but it's not negative. So it might sound like death and underworld is negative, but it's not. It's not. It's just the place through which everything returns. And the very bottom part, the dark, watery depths, are desire. So if all of matter is made up of the desire to be, then the return to the ground, the return to the water, and the return to the desire to be and to no longer be, but to want to be, as life slips off, slips over the hill and you start um, careening towards there, then you feel the desire to be, but you're also embracing the return to your source. And when you're just born, you feel the comfort of the womb and the comfort um, of your parents and the comfort of just being a little baby. But you also feel the will to come into your own and to go up the mountain and to be defined and hard and light and experienced. So that's like the pull. But the love can't be wiped away. All the vast waters can't wash away the love. And now it's a description of this time of year that we're existing right now at this moment, which is the time of the grain harvest. In between Pesach and Shavuot is the time of the Omer, where the time when the little grains of wheat are ripening. And at this point, as they're trying to come into being and they want to reach their definition and know who they are, you don't want to get rained on, which is like raining on your parade. And because you don't want to get rained on. But what is the rain? Rain is the potential and desires, right? So as you're trying to get something done or to become something, you don't want to get sidetracked and rained on with every potential or every desire. You want to kind of push those potentials and desires to the side and focus on just one of those potentials and desires to get something done. But then once that's accomplished, you don't want to get lost in that. And then you want to re-embrace what it means to reimagine what you could be, what it means to return to that place of desire. So water itself, which is at its lowest point, is always referred to, and we'll go to the sources there, is always referred to as desire. But it's also referred to as Torah. So this is called the Torah of the earth, and we're teaching Torah, and we're trying. And Torah is the wisdom with which the creation is created, and you're looking at it and peering at it for guidance. So that wisdom, what is the metaphor that the Torah refers to over and over again? That Torah is, it's water. So you have water being described as desire, and you have water being described as wisdom. But to some thinking, desire and wisdom is the opposite, right? Like if I'm wise, I'm not so full of desires, and if I'm desire, then I'm being foolish. But actually, the Torah sees that as a singular flow. And wisdom is described as the water as it's pouring down the mountain, like it comes from the mountain. So the desire is the thing that, like if you describe it in the natural and agricultural sense, the water is the thing that gave life and gives life to the plant and gives life to the being. So all that desire is watering and giving pleasure to the being to grow. But when it gets up to the top and it learns some wisdom, then that water flows down from the mountain, flows down from the definition. And as it flows down the mountain, i.e., like some very high defined wisdom, it flows down to the mountain, down to like the most important and details of life That's where you have like true wisdom, like some abstract idea that isn't just left up in some pure rock solid abstractions, but it goes down into the sort of messy, watery aspects of life at the shore, and it informs it. And then you have actual wisdom. So some abstract truth, but that can get applied to a detail. That's like what Torah is. Because Torah is wisdom, but not just, in other words, not just like I figured something out or I'm smart, but that I have guidance for life. So it flows from the top all the way down to the bottom. So here in Shir Shirim Rabbah, which is source 4, it's a Shir Shirim Rabbah is Midrash, which is it's like commentary on the Torah from the written Torah from about 2,000 years ago. It's the oral transmission of the Jewish people, and it's the continued living wisdom that is sort of coming out of people's mouths every generation. So here he says, source 4. Another matter, your love is better than wine. Song of Songs 1-2. Words of Torah can be compared to water, wine, oil, honey, and milk, these different liquids. And now he's going to focus on water. We'll focus on water. And just briefly, wine is the mystical aspect. When you're reading life in a mystical way, it's like you're drunk. It's all about love, and and things are even more fluid than regular water. Oil is when you're looking at life through an essential lens. You're looking at it like in its essence. And honey is everything is positive, everything is sweet. And milk has to do with the white line that goes through creation. But water, just as water goes from one end of the earth to the other, as it is written, to the one who spread forth the water above the waters, so does Torah go from one end of the earth to the other. As it is written, the measure is longer than the earth. And just as water is forever living, so is Torah forever living. So we're talking about wisdom and guidance. And then Shir Shirim goes on to keep describing it. So I'm going to read it like a poem. Just as water comes from heaven, so does Torah come from heaven. Just as water has many voices, so does Torah have many voices. So in other words, just like wisdom comes from a high place and comes down, and that you can see it in the creation of the heavens, this intelligence, so to Torah, i.e. the guidance that we have, is like that too. Just as water has so many voices, so too Torah has many voices. There's different perspectives and different voices, and people see it differently. Just as water restores the soul and gives you life, so does Torah and wisdom give you life. It actually restores you. Just as water cleanses you, so does Torah, meaning wisdom, cleanse you. Just as water originates in tiny drops and then accumulates into a big stream and river, so too is Torah acquired by learning a word today and a little thing here and a little thing there, and then after a while it accumulates to a big stream. Just as, and that's the advice of, rather than going to get wisdom when you're in desperation, rather every day make sure to have a certain amount of wisdom and a certain amount of Torah in your life, so that you're every day reaching that thing, drop by drop. I guess you could say it's like Chinese water torture, but okay. Just as water covers over the nakedness of the sea, so does Torah cover over our faults. So that it like washes away whatever negativity we could see. It it covers that up. Let's see. Mm-hmm. Just as water is not pleasing to a person who's not thirsty, so too Torah is not appreciated unless someone is thirsty. Just as right, because if you're not thirsting for it, then it's not restoring. Just as water leaves high places alone and runs down to low places, so too Torah leaves alone someone who is haughty, like I guess like a mountain, and it goes down to someone who's modest and unarrogant, right? So wisdom doesn't flow down to arrogance; it flows down to humility. Just as water is not kept in silver and gold vessels, but the simplest clay vessels. Back then, it was kept in clay vessels. Now, unfortunately, it's plastic bottles. But it's still a modest vessel. So too Torah is sustained by one who makes themselves into a modest and a clay vessel. Just as a scholar is not embarrassed to ask a student, pass me some water, a scholar is not embarrassed to learn from a student a chapter, a verse, or a word, or even a letter, right? No one's embarrassed to admit that they need water. So too, no one who is studying Torah is embarrassed to admit that they need Torah, that they are not the guru and provider of all knowledge, right? Just as one who does not know how to float in water will eventually drown, so too one who cannot float on and point out words of Torah will eventually, I guess saying, will eventually drown in it. This is the way the Midrash is, like about 2,000 years old, and this is this sort of poetic affinity between the movements of water and wisdom. One of the, in Kabbalah, which is especially in Hasidut, it says about that consciousness is like water. And it's like a river, and it has the same, and you follow the dimensions of water in the same way that you follow a river. The same way you track a river and watch a river is the same way you track wisdom and your mind. For instance, it says that every idea is like a river that has a depth to it, it has a width to it, and it has a length to it. So one of the earliest examples of Torah very clearly being described as water is Rabbi Akiva, who is the rabbi of rabbis. If Moshe in the Torah is considered the prophet of prophets, Rabbi Akiva is the rabbi of rabbis. And he was 40 years old, and he was illiterate, and he didn't think that he could gain wisdom. But then he saw water flowing over a rock, and he saw how the water was carving the rock out. And he said, if water, which is so soft and fluid, can cut through a rock, which is so rigid and hard, then so too, no matter how hard my mind is, no matter how hard-headed I think I am, if I keep the water pouring on it, it'll carve out, it'll make its dent. And so he applied himself, and then he became, is definitely the sort of rabbi of rabbis. So in that metaphor is all of, it's not just like, oh, it's water, isn't that cute? It's actually talking about the very nature of water. It's the very same way wisdom is. It's like, it's not about the initial blast. It's the pouring and pouring and pouring and pouring that eventually makes, like, it carves out the river. So in an idea, you have the depth of an idea, the depth of wisdom, and that is how deep an idea can go. So you take an idea and you say how deep this idea can go, and then you say, all right, that's the surface of it, but what's underneath it? And what's underneath that idea? What's the deeper aspect of that idea? What's the deeper aspect? And it says that as you get to the deeper and deeper aspects of each idea, you're getting to the place where all ideas converge. So as you get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, then all things are coming into one deep idea at the very bottom. And a river is just like that too. So you have this deep current underneath the river where everything is sort of, it's like the heart and depth of the river. And when you think about any piece of wisdom and you keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper into it, you'll come to the point where all ideas unite. And that's a meditation. But you also have the width of the river, which is compared to all of the different ideas within that idea. like the ideas about it, all the details of it. That's called the width of the river. And the length of the river is how far the idea goes, how far it travels along to different ideas. And as you track a river down the mountain, it's by nature, it goes like this, it does its little right and left and right and left and right and left. So it's sort of moving a little to one direction and moving a little bit, and it covers its ground as it goes down the mountain. The essential aspect of that metaphor is also, I forgot, it's a Greek, I don't remember the Greek philosopher, but anyways, he says that you never step into the same river twice. So as you step into the river, the water has passed through. But what we are calling the river is actually the banks of the river, right? So as the water flows down your rock, right, it carves out the banks of the river, which is sort of the memory of your ideas, the memory of your, I guess you could say, your traumas or your memories or your discoveries or the things you're pretty sure about. And now as your new thinking pours through that channel, it goes to those same familiar paths, and you think the same way as before. Heraclides, thank you. So it both nearly came in at the same time. So what are you calling the river is actually that bank, because the water would turn into a pond or a lake or would turn into whatever. It's the memory inside of the rock that actually defines that river, but the water is new. So the river is like the relationship between what you previously thought and what previously worked and the new knowledge and discovery that's running through it. And part of the challenge is in where did it get dammed up, or where is it going to a little eddy and spooling around, and it needs to flow. The beauty that you can learn from watching a river is that it will always find its shape. You just have to give it time and not prevent it. It goes to its shape. It finds its shape, and it moves the way it should. So you don't have to apply that much messing around. You just have to let it sort of flow. So anyways, the Kabbalah says about, for instance, in a mikvah, which is living waters, is it has to flow into it. You can't capture it. So if a mikveh is like where you immerse and you cleanse and become renewed, it's the same thing like in Torah, with a new, fresh mindset of returning back to the sea. If the water is this primordial pre-existence beyond any defined idea, when you want to be refreshed and renewed, then you return back to the ocean, you let go of everything, and then you come out like you're born anew. In the same way within an idea, if you have a very rock solid idea that you're holding on to, you let it immerse into water, meaning allow the potential and the I don't know to wash over it. And then as it becomes, it comes new, then it's refreshed and you can look at it again. But the mikvah works if it's flowing naturally into a spot. So like if it's going down a river and it flows into a place, and then it's flowing out of the place, then you can go. But if you just take the water and bottle it and then pour it into your bathtub, in halacha it doesn't work. It has to be alive. If it's if it's coming from rain, then it works. Rivers also change their course and change their shape as needed over time. That's their essential nature. Right. So they're constantly responding. They just let it you let it be. And even if even if, let's say, like in a farm, the river was twisted, it will over time figure itself out. Let me see. Okay, so we have this primordial bottom sea, and then we have the fire on top. And any other thoughts before I move? Okay, the other aspect of water, which is another vessel for water, is the idea of the well. So inside of the Torah, the well shows up again and again and again and again and again. It's maybe the most famous well is Miriam's well, which is the well that accompanies us through the wilderness, the thing that gives water in the wild. And actually, that well is very interesting. In the Midrash, it says it was Miriam's well was actually like a metal sieve with a bunch of holes in it, and you'd lay it down on the ground, and they would turn it and twist it into the ground. It's like a big metal thing, and they would twist it into the ground, and it had a sieve, and then the water, even though it was a wilderness, sort of like a desert, but the earth would pour in, and in the morning you would have water, and they would carry it with you. The other explanation, it was just a miraculous, wherever we went, water would we would be able to find water. But the definition of the well is not just with Miriam. It's Abraham is digging wells, and Yitzhak is digging wells, and Yaakov, Jacob, if he goes to the well, that's where he finds Rachel and Leah. And Moshe, when he leaves Egypt, he goes to the well, and that's where he gets marries Zipporah. So all of this going to the well, a lot of times it means going to desire, right? In the same way that the depths of water is the desire to be, and maybe the love on top is the fire, but the to go to desire means to go to the well, and the well is like an empty. Is like an empty vessel. It's like a mouth, something that's yearning for the desire. It's the visual for a desire to be is like the cavity that is desiring water. In any place that is empty, it brings water to it. That's the in Kabbalah, like brings water. So yeah, the I'm also thinking, Gavias, I'm also thinking about the renewing aspects of waves, which feel entirely different from a wave, but are also constantly renewing and leads to a source, different than a river, right? Right. There's great wisdom in a desire, obviously. Um, it's just not defined. Thank you for all these notes. They're beautiful. Now I'm losing myself in the ideas, but one of the that makes me think of another aspect in the Tehillim. It says that those that go down in the boats to the depths of the sea, they know the wonders of the Creator. And in Torah, there are two explanations for that. The first one is just literally that people that live on the land, they know a lot of wonders. But the people that are going into the sea, the creatures they see there are not creatures that people normally experience. So they know these true wonders of the unknown, the depth, right? And then the deeper part of that commentary is that those that go down to the depths in boats, meaning the people in life that go down to the deeper the darker, more unknown parts of life. They actually know the wonders of creation even more than the people that like skim on the surface. And the waves are the waves of the sea are sort of that. Um, the waves of the sea are sort of like the um, circumference or the line of the unknown lapping at the definition. So if the earth and the sea and the shore is the place where you have solid ground and you can stand the things that you know, maybe the mountain is like the pure abstract, like the highest point of definition. The sea is like a little bit, the beach is a little bit of a mix, but at least it's dry land, you can stand on it. The sea, the waves, where the waves are hitting the beach is like where the line between the unknown and the known, and the unknown is like lapping at it and like um, peeling it away, you know, like challenging the I know, and then the ocean's like, oh yeah, well, not really, and it's like bringing it out. But as the process of the mountain, like the height of that crumbles, then the circumference of the island that gets bigger as the love is being cooked, and then the island gets bigger, you know more, and then you know that you know less because the circle of the unknown is now actually larger, so you get a bigger understanding of just how little you know when you know more. So that is also an aspect of what, like the knowledge of the beach, as opposed to the knowledge of the river. The river is like the way in which your wisdom sort of carves out and teaches your rational and defined mind, like teaches yourself. That's like the thoughts, like the distinct thoughts. But the ocean is like the massive unknown lapping at the source. So um, it's that same place that in the first story, it's the place where the snake comes from the deep, from the earth, comes out of the earth and has a bunch of secret information. It's the place that Jonah thinks that he can run away to the sea and avoid responsibility or whatever, but there in the sea, he gets brought down to the depth of the sea by this giant fish. And from the depths of the sea, he cries out. So like he's like the one that goes down in the boat to the depths of the ocean, like the submarine, and he goes down to the very, very, very bottom of the soul. And then there he screams out from there, like this deep cry. So maybe he has maybe the deepest understanding of anyone's comments about stuff. Okay, so here's source 5. So in source 5, it's Mishle, which is written also attributed to King Shlomo. Just as the face of water reflects a face, so does the heart of a human reflect a person. So, Kamayim hapanim lapanim, kain lev ha'adam la'adam. So, I guess the more clear translation from the Hebrew is like just as the face of water reflects the face of the gazer of the water, so to the heart of a person reflects the person. So there's a couple ways that wisdom can be taken. So, in other words, if I want to understand myself, it's like looking in my depths. There's another way to understand it too. But if I want to understand myself, I look at my depths. And when I look in the depths of my soul, I see some sort of undefined nothing there. If I go really, 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 really deep, like just some simple surface that I can't define, right? So if someone is on the search to know themselves, well, by climbing up the mountain, you get to know yourself. But when you get to the core and the depths of yourself, it's like this, it's just like a sea. It's a turmoil and a sea, and it can't be known. But if you look on the face of it, it will reflect your face. The Kabbalah also says that about the Creator. In the Torah, the Creator is understood by many, many commentators as totally undefinable and undescribable. No name could be given to the Creator, and no definition or description at all. In fact, nothing could be known of it at all. Only what it's saying, i.e., only creation, only nature, only the sea and the sky and the birds and the fish and the way life rolls out and unfurls. That's like talking, but what's talking? No comment, because there's no way to describe it. If you try to give a name for that, or you try to describe it, it's like looking at the most simple surface of the waters, totally undefined, nothing, no ripple. So if you look at that, then you see your own face. You see your own face clearly reflected back, which the Kabbalah says that's why when we look at the Creator, we actually see a human face looking back at us, because the Creator is this simple, unknown mirror of the surface. So we look towards our source and we see ourselves. And we try to define that through, it's the only way of knowing, is to anthropomorphize everything. It's the way we know. So is it clear it is that the heart reflects the person who contains that heart? Or is it the heart reflecting the humanity of a person who sees them? Could you explain it to me? Because I think that's the other interpretation.
I was just wondering if from the Hebrew it's clear that it's like the heart reflects the face of the person themselves, like seeing themselves clearly, or if it's an encounter with two,
Yeah, I think the other way to read it, other way to read it is that if you're just as you're looking face to face, if you go heart to heart, then then it responds, it reflects. Like if I come at someone with unfeeling and uncaring and unloving, then I should not be surprised that that's what gets reflected back. But if I'm feeling unnoticed, and then I come to some person and notice them and see them and acknowledge them and give that, then it's oftentimes that it will reflect back. It's like, and then that's the other way of reading that verse. But and particularly for this, for the Torah of the earth, it's trying to, it's not just like, oh, that's cool. It's that actually the way, it's what we defined earlier as Torah, which is to look at the way in which nature and the creation and the creative process of the world, all of these aspects, and say, what can I learn from it? Like for guidance. As opposed to, let's say, I need, it says in the prophets that in the time to come, a person will no longer have to look towards another person and say, tell me of God, because everyone will know the wisdom of God, like the water fills the sea. So it's the idea that there won't be any need for teaching in the way that we think of teaching, as like that teaching comes from an authority, and you have to get the authority to tell you, right? And someone tells you a piece of information. I'm not actually knocking it because it's the world I live in. So, but like, I don't know if I can trust that piece of information. Let me verify it with an authority, which is, it's not a full knock on it, but it's saying in the future, that type of way of knowing will be, we'll be able to see, and that seeing is looking at the way in which these natural systems are created by the source of creation, and saying, wow, that there's a depth to it. It's not like a simplicity just because it's happening every day. It's not a simplicity that can be ignored. It's something that should be constantly turned over and over and over. And the nature of water is teaching you. What else is, right? I mean, that's where that wisdom is coming from. It's coming from the nature of water. Right. So we say the inner authority versus external authority. So definitely the Torah and within the water is more of an internal wisdom as opposed to the Torah that is on top of the mountain. Right. The Torah is that's on top of the mountain is rarefied. It's like only you get to the top of the mountain and then you take it and then you bring it down and then everyone listens to it. That's like the metaphor, like you crawl up and there's someone sitting in a cave on top of a mountain and they're going to tell you, because they reach the heights. But water, that's within the wisdom, is water is saturating everything. It's giving life to everything. So it's like like by my own body, I can know wisdom. There's actually an argument in the rabbis of the same midrashim, where one of them says, it's not so bad if we lost the Torah, because I just go outside and I could figure the whole thing out again, right? Like I'm not so worried about. The other one was talking about like preserving it, and the other rabbi was like, well, I could just go outside and figure it all out. Like there it is, it's sitting there. So, but that's like he's trusting the renewal that would come from a direct encounter of Torah, like to have a Har Sinai, a Mount Sinai from listening to the source. So I'm going to go to the next little source, I guess. That's the name of those. So it's Shmuel, and it says, we must all die. Ki mos namus uchamayim anigarim arza asher lo yosefu. So we must all die. We are like water that is poured out on the ground and cannot be gathered up. So that cheerful bit. Life is like coming out, then it spills out onto the ground, and then it seeps into the ground. And then it saturates back into the ground and then emerges back up again. And spills out on the ground and emerges back up again. It spills out on the ground. That's like the advice of this person is saying, if not now, when? Like it's not like we get our time and then we go back to the sea. That's a donkey. Do you hear that? Or is it just me? Okay, so there's another interesting moment in the Torah, in the story of Eov. And Eov, he's the one, Job is the one who goes through suffering, and in the suffering, he stays pretty stoic through the whole thing. But eventually, I'm not going to go through the whole story, but eventually his friends come and they try to sort of cheer him up by insulting him, and it doesn't work. And then he's still sort of shocked by the suffering that he goes through. And then the Creator shows up in a big whirlwind, which is like a tempest, like a what is it? One of those things a tempest in the water, cyclone, and asks 49 questions. And in the Jewish tradition, there's something called the 50 gates of wisdom, or the 50 gates of Bina. And there are 48 of them, which is called the rational mind. And then the 49th is like beyond that. And then the 50th is unattainable. That's the sort of these gates of wisdom. And everyone is going through these gates of wisdom. And at each thing, you're rising higher and higher and higher. A human mind can attain 48 gates of wisdom. The 49th, Moses reached. And the 50th, he couldn't. It was unattainable. So the tradition is that these are the questions inside of Job. And basically, what happens is Job is complaining, and then the source of creation shows up in a massive cyclone, and says, what do you know about anything? And and lists all, do you know why a horse goes, right? That's actually one of them. It's not just the fact that there was a donkey doing that. You know why it does that? Not like the explanation, like why is life like that? Why do you know why a bird should fly? Do you know why? And it lists all these aspects of creation where, if you think about it in a deep way, you don't actually know why that's the way it is. And it goes through all of them. The last two are the 49th is the behemoth, which is like a um, um, it's like the all of life as one big massive being, right? It's like the all of land, all life on the rock as a singular huge behemoth being. And do you know anything about that? Like, do you actually, can your mind grasp all of life as a massive being, like everything that is known? No, you can't. So your demands to the authority figure don't really make sense, because it's not something that you can it's not answers that you can get. And then the last one, it says, do you know anything about the Leviathan? And Leviathan is this massive sea creature in the water, and that is representing the unknown, right? So as you go up in knowledge and life, you're learning that I know, like the Rambam says, that you should teach your mouth to say I don't know, because if you familiarize yourself with saying I don't know, then when you have a question or something that you're contemplating, your first reaction, your instinct to say I don't know. So therefore you might know, because you might then think about it and maybe you would know it. But if you automatically think you know something, then you'll never ask the question. So you habituate yourself to always saying, your reaction to each question that comes in your life is to say, I don't know, let me think about this. And the each one of these gates of Bina are like learning to say I don't know about different aspects of life, until you realize that, oh, life itself, everything that I know, I don't know. And you let go of that. That's like the 49th level. Like I'm not the authority on anything. But then the 50th level, which is like the Leviathan, which is like, I don't even know the unknown. I don't even know what I don't know. Like, not only do I not know what I know, I don't even know what I don't know. I don't know. And that's like the ultimate release, the Leviathan, which is the being of the sea, right? So if I could think, well, could I get my whole mind around life in the known world? I have to admit I can't. Like, I can't, and the rest of us can't. It's just not something we can do. It's not something the mind is equipped to wrap itself around everything that is possible to know. And then the Leviathan is admitting, and there's just, I don't even know what is not possible to know. I don't even know the unknown. So there's definitely life and parts and creation, things happening that I'll never ever know, and will never be able to know. And that's sort of like the Leviathan, the being that is under the sea. So in the Kabbalah, coming to terms with those things is not considered a weakness, but is considered a strength of mind, right? To be able to face those things and to know, I don't know this and I don't know that, and allows you to be open to new channels all the time, as opposed to like having a rigid um, uh, banks of a river, to be thinking the same thing over and over again. Whoa, look at this. Can I quote it? Anytime I could quote Bruce Lee. Okay. Be like water making its way through cracks. Do not be assertive, but adjust to the object, and you shall find a way around and through it. If nothing within you stays rigid, outward things will disclose themselves. Empty your mind and be formless and shapeless like water. If you put the water into a cup, it becomes the cup. If you put the water into a bottle, it becomes a bottle. If you put into a teapot, it becomes a teapot. And now water can flow and it can crash. Be water, my friend. So, and I think Bruce Lee would agree with this too. So in the Torah, especially in that cycle of the holidays, like that's the wisdom of Hanukkah, the very bottom of the year, the darkest, wettest time of the year, is to learn to just be completely fluid and let go. And then also Torah teaches that there's some times where you have to not be like water, right? And I think Bruce Lee also will have quotes like that too, right? Where it's like, oh, and now's the time to ripen and not get rained on. Don't just like be a loose blob and let anything happen. Now's the time that you have to focus. And the real the wisdom is to know this goes back to what we were learning in previous classes, which is that all of experience is made up of olam, shana, and nefesh, which is world, time, and soul or being, which is like these three ingredients that make up these shifting experience. The shana, the change time, the year, the seasons, understanding seasons, in Hebrew the word is tekufot, which is periods. Being able to embrace periods, meaning both in a biological way, but also in a calendrical way. The downturning, when things go back into the sea, when things go down to the bottom, to not feel that that will be a collapse and not be afraid of it, not be afraid of things returning to their source, but embrace them to return to their source so they can emerge anew. And actually at the very, very bottom of the year is Hanukkah. And Hanukkah is that teaching of tekufot, of periods, the calendrical year. And I'm going to share the screen. Let's see. Yeah. The calendrical year here, there, I'll go to this one. Is that shared? So right here on the bottom where it says Shana, Tevet, and Kislev, right here is where Hanukkah is. It's very bottom of the ocean, the very bottom of the sea. It's the place where the night is the longest, the days are the coldest in most of the experience that we've had. And that's not true for the entire planet. But at the very bottom of the sea, it's where the coldest, darkest, where things are most unknown, and it looks like things are never going to return, but actually they are. They're going to go back, and the light is going to be born again, and everything's going to emerge again. But at this exact time, you have that depth, which is like considered the depths of the soul, the depths of the year, the depths of knowledge, the depths of the unknown. And it's at that point, which is why Hanukkah is the idea that is that you light candles during that time. It says that Adam thought the whole year and all of creation was going to slip away. And so because he saw it was the first year, right? So didn't know that it would come back around. And so right at the very bottom of the year, primordial Adam lit candles at that time of the year to sort of jumpstart the fire of the year, to help warm up the year, to like get it rolling right here. It says that each one of the descendants of original man have that custom, and the Jews do it for one reason, and other people do it for another reason. That's what the Gemara says, but it all comes from that original time of lighting candles at the darkest time of the year. And you see that very many human cultures do that right there. But one of the things that Jewish people do is there's gelt, right? Which is always this weird thing where you go into Trader Joe's and there's a big pile of gold coins. And if I'm Jewish, and I think like, I don't even know what other people are thinking when they see this. Like, they just see this like big thing of gold coins. And one time I was sitting there and like, what's that? Someone said, what are all these gold coins there? And then someone said, it's a Jewish holiday. And I was like, oh no. Like, without context, it's a little embarrassing. But the point is the gold, because the gold is like eternal blood, and it's found in the depths of the earth, right? So just like in the depths of the womb, you have the period, which is either life or death, like the most deep unknown. When you mine the depths, you pull out this little gold, and that gold is like it's like eternal flame. Gold is like fire, but as a rock, so it's eternal. And it's not so much the value, like monetary value of the coin, but the gold itself, like is that time of the year is special. It's like the same way that there's a flame that you're lighting a flame is the same way you're um, looking at the fire that's inside of the earth. I don't know why we went there, but it is um, the time of Hanukkah. The thing that we say about it is that the light that comes from the darkness is brighter than the light that comes from light. And in Kabbalah, the word light, or, means experience. So when you shine light on something, it means to experience it, right? So when the light, i.e., like the experience of darkness, is more of experience than the experience of light. In fact, uh, in the Gemara, we refer to someone who can't see, someone who is blind, as someone who has a lot of light. It means like they have a lot of light in their eyes, which is the sort of, it's the same thing as the Hanukkah. Let's see. Okay. And more water. Oh, I didn't even go into it. So now, okay, so in source 7, Eov, Job, he says, were you there when I laid the earth's foundations? Speak if you have any understanding. Do you know who fixed its dimensions or who measured it with a line, or where the bases were sunk, or the cornerstones, or when the morning stars sang together and all the divine beings shouted for joy? Who closed the sea behind the doors when it gushed forth out of the womb, and when it clothed in its clouds and swaddled in dense clouds? So that's this. You don't know the depths. I'm going to stop the share. Any thoughts that are coming up? Dee-dee. Okay, I'm going to do another share. So here we have the year again. And right now, at the time of us being together here, we're moving right into the second moon over here. Do you see the little cursor? Okay. So then in a sense, this part is describing the water cycle, which is the water moving up and then the water going back down. So you have the birth here in this, and let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. These are the 12 moons of the year as the sun goes around uh, the year. the moons do their turn. Instead of over a singular year, they do a similar dance, a dance of growing and then shrinking. They do the moon, she does that she does that 12 times. So right now we're in this second month. So the first month is being born, which is to come out of the water, out of the unknown, to go into the known, and to reach into the second month, which is where it's not just about the fact that you're letting go of the womb and you're letting go of the unknown and you're trying to, but now it's like, oh, you have to be defined. You have to, and it's at this point which it's most important not to get rained on, not to allow the desires and possible potentials to pull you away from reaching definition. Over here in Sivan, which is the driest, hottest, most defined part of the year, which is where the Torah is given, that's where you find your mitzvah, you know your definition, you know your purpose, you know who you are and what you need to accomplish. And you turn that mountain. So you turn, just like here, you're turning over that mountain. It's also the place of Gan Eden. It's the place where things are the most simplified. So in order to receive to understanding of like who I am, I need to be able to simplify all of the many details of my life to get to what is the core picture here. And so that's the Gan Eden is sort of like a very simplified version of life in its essence. And so that you could see what is the purpose of man, what is the purpose of humans. And the purpose of humans in that most abstract and simplified view is to tend the garden. And if the whole entire earth is a Garden of Eden, right? It's the garden in which we were planted in, then it's the meaning of life for each and every one of us to tend the place that we were put into, right? And I said, like, why am I here? What's the purpose of life? What's my, that's the purpose. That's the message of Torah. It's to tend the place that you're living. That's what you put in there, to serve and to protect it, right? That's the purpose. Like, what is my meaning? What's my purpose in life? You don't need to ask someone or read it in a book. You just look at nature and it will answer you. It will say, your purpose is to tend and to protect this, and you will receive that answer. But that is a very sort of essential and not particular. And how is this person supposed to do that, right? At this exact moment, in this exact situation, what does that mean for me? Is not, is something that only each person can know. But the general thing of what is the purpose of a human being is answered in that story. It's to serve and protect the garden. And most particularly for human beings, since we're not situated in the sky, I know these things seem almost childish, or we're not situated in the water, and we don't exist, we weren't born into space, then the most particular thing is to take care of trees. That's the idea of the story. It's to tend the trees. And if we tend the trees, then they create all these massive worlds of life. We don't have to take care of everything. We actually just have to tend and care for the trees, that they have what they need and they're planted in the right place. And like if we just made it our mission to like plant millions and millions of trees, they would go and do a whole bunch of things for the rest of life, right? They would do it. But what does it mean particularly for my individual? Then I need to receive that up here. And that's like called receiving the Torah, and that's a holiday of Shavuot. And then when you move down, and this is since we're talking about the Torah of water, this is the point where it says in Gan Eden, there's 4 rivers that stream down the mountain, 4 directions, right? And these are called the 4 mothers. And these mothers are like the directions of people's lives. And the 4 mothers are the mothers that they give birth to the 12 tribes. And so if there's like 12 different personality types and 12 different types of people, like the warriors and the philosophers and the artists and the scientists and the farm, well, everyone needs to be farming, but the ones that are like in touch with the earth, like in the ground, each one of these directions for it's like a different tribe, a different personality, and they come from four mothers, which are like the four directions. But these are like streams where now desire and potential has been brought up in clouds to the top of the mountain and is now pouring down the mountain in channels, right? In little paths, which is like the path of life that you can take. And each one of us, will figure out which path that is. And when you go down the mountain, you hit the month of Av, which is the month of fire, it's the hottest thing. It's the least amount of water there. So you've defined yourself the most. And that's the place where everything is defined. And because of that, you're going to end up damaging things. You're going to burn things. Things are going to get burned. Things are going to get hurt. There's going to be damage. And that's like Av is the month of damage and the month of love. But part of this sort of thing is desire and love, which is nice, right? Because you're basically living between love and desire. Both of those are nice. So if we existing in this sort of love affair between love and desire. Love is like the fire, the thing that reaches for definition that wants, and desire can never be met. But it constantly wants. And here at the hottest point of the year is when fires break out. In Israel, they break out because it's so dry. In America, in lots of parts of America, it's the same exact time. It's when the fires break out. And those fires are modeled, and it's a time to burn a field or whatever. They're modeled on the face of the earth. They're modeled, and also modeled in a person, and in their path in life, in their circle, like the water cycle. You also have this path of life, of definition and return. And that exact moment is the time of fire in each one of our lives. And then Elul is the Jewish month of return. We call it Teshuvah, return. It's when you're going back to the water and you do an accounting of your life. You do an accounting of the year. So in Nisan, you're trying to grow. And in Elul, you're trying to give an accounting for everything that happened over that year. It's a time where we reach out and we say sorry to the people that we hurt. And we let go of the promises and vows that we took. It's all, this whole month is the time of just letting go and being ready to return to our source and forgive everyone and ask forgiveness from everyone, and to say that I know this is the way this year played out. And in the life cycle, it means I know this is the way life played out, like in general, and I'm sorry for that, like in a lifetime. And in the same way that's in the agricultural cycle, in the same way it is like for life in general. There's every part of life contains a part where you need to hold on to that Elul and be ready to forgive and to and be forgiven, and realize that we just emerge out and then we spill out, and then we go back we spill out back onto the earth. And then Tishrei is the month of gathering, where everything is all gathered together, where we're coming back to our source. It's the time where we pray for rain, where the water comes in, where everything starts to get dark. And that's the Shabbat of the year. It's like the rest. So if all of this 6 months are the activity, here in Shabbat is the rest, where it's the beginning of the rest. In the beginning, if Elul is letting go, Tishrei is the splash when you jump in. And that's where everyone gathers. All the souls are gathered. Everything comes together. And that's where you're entering back into these waters, which is back into the cleansing of the renewal, back to the return to the potential, to the return to just the straight desire to be, not to be thinking about what happened and how it played out, but just the desire to be. And then it moves into Cheshvan, and actually we actually did this part. So Cheshvan and Kislev, and that goes into Hanukkah, which is at the depths and the bottom of the soul, like the most watery and most potential place is where you have a twin of the Torah. So if the Torah is given on Har Sinai, like the top of the mountain, you have like the height of wisdom and definition, where you know what you were supposed to do, and you know your mitzvah, and you know what life's about, and you know, and that. It actually, here, you pop out, and you receive this wisdom from here, right? So at the top of the mountain, you actually receive, and the picture in Har Sinai is that there's this big dark cloud where the heavens are touching the mountain, right? This big dark space. So that's like this water pours out on top of the mountain and then pours down the mountain like wisdom. And it's actually the wisdom that comes from this depth at the very, very bottom of this womb of life and death and the unknown. It pours out and then spills out over the mountain and gives life to everything. In the same way, here you have a twinning in Hanukkah, where at the very, very darkest, deepest, watery depths of the year, you have the gold, the little eternal flame, then you have the candle, the light. And it actually says that we watch the fire and see what it says. So it's actually at the deepest, darkest place of the year is when the room is completely dark, you can appreciate the candle. You can appreciate the little light. So Gabriel says, in this sense, is Hanukkah to Sukkot as Yom Kippur is to Purim. So, yeah, so we have just another couple minutes. So then as you move out, this is sort of receiving the inner Torah here. If this is the revealed Torah, the wisdom which is obvious and clear and gives definition to your life, the wisdom of Hanukkah is like the light that comes from the darkness. It's the things that don't make sense. And actually the tribe here, that is this tribe here is Shimshon, Samson. He comes from Dan, which is like it's Binyamin, the wolf, and it's Dan, so the snake. And the snake is actually, the tribe here is the snake. That's lives over here. And the snake has the deepest inner Torah. And that is like the Torah, the wisdom of all the depths and the potential and the darkness, wisdom that the snake has. And Shimshon, who's like he's sort of the shepherd of that tribe. He's like the emblem. His life makes no sense. He has no wisdom at all, like seemingly. Like if you read the story, it's just like one outrageous thing after another, and you go, what is wrong with this person? And then his success is that basically his life becomes such an immense failure that he just pulls the whole building down on top of him, and everything gets destroyed. And they're like, why are you sharing this story? Like, why did this, for what reason? And somebody makes no sense, and their whole life story makes no sense. And then the ending is just like, what? It makes no sense. But it's like the aspect of life that just literally makes no sense. And there's depth there. If you watch him, you see that he's doing things that are has immense hidden wisdom, but not outright wisdom. So then you have the month of Shvat, and Shvat is Asher, which is the tribe of the tree. That's their emblem of the tree, which is the time of the year when the sap comes up through the trees. So that's also an idea of hidden wisdom. It's like the internal life, the water being drawn up through the tree, but the tree looks like it's dead. But there's water being drawn up through it at that month of the year. And the tribe, Asher, his symbol is the tree. And it's also Tu B'Shvat, which is the head of the year for trees. And so you have like this depth of the snake wisdom, and then you have the depths of the sap that runs through the tree. And then you have Adar, which is Naphtali, and that is the deer. And Adar is the time of Purim. this is, I was just we're going through this cycle because Gabriel asked, but this is also the water cycle, right? So now this is the most watery time of the year in a sense. So it's gone through like 6 months of water. It's as purified and unknown and pure potential as possible, right? If Kislev is like the depth and depth, right? So it's the deepest part of the year, but this is the most saturated. Like you've gone through the whole process of letting go, and now you're about to become again, to be born. You're like a soul coming into being, and that's Adar. So is um, so Adar is twinning with Elul. So if you look at Adar here, it's like the prep month for being born. Elul is like the prep month for returning to the unknown. So while Elul is like, let me see what I can do in accounting for, Adar is the place where you have it's the holiday, it's Purim, the holiday of wine, right? It's like you've got the wine, now it's the time of masks. So you put on masks because you're about to be born. So you're about to put on the mask, the persona, and you're about to play the part again. And you're going to be born and go through this thing. But right in this month here, is that it's the idea is it's hovering between life and death and between good and evil. That's that whole month right there in Adar. It's the when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, and it's the time of Purim, which is this 50-50 thing, because it's like the moment right before a pregnancy, right before the baby is born. Who knows what it will be? Everything is hanging on like a coin. It could flip. So Purim is like, flipping a coin, and you have the wine, and then you emerge. Yeah. So if the twinning and reflection. So if the whole active part of the year, which is the time where the water cycle is draining and everything is getting drier and drier and drier, and this is the exact twin of it, its reflection of everything is going back into potential, then each one of these months sort of twins each other. So this month that we are here in ER is twinned with Cheshvan here. And the giving of the Torah, the Sivan, is twinned with Kislev. So like the giving of the external Torah is for Shavuot is in Sivan, and the beginning of the internal Torah, the giving of the inner Torah, is in Kislev. It's like the Kislev is the month of the giving of the Torah. So I guess to finish, this little model of fire and water is like what the Midrash says, that the Torah is given in 3 places: given with fire, it's given with water, and it's given with wilderness. So you receive guidance from those 3 things. You receive Torah from those 3 things. The giving of the fire is this type of wisdom. It's where the Torah is given through definition, through experience, through clarity, through becoming, through being. That's the giving of the Torah through fire. The giving of the Torah through water is what you learn through becoming fluid and letting go, returning to your source, gathering in with everyone, not harsh definitions, letting go. That's the Torah that's given in water. And the Torah that is given in the wilderness is like what we always talk about, which is like hitbodedut, meaning going into the wilderness, going into nature, and hearing what it's saying, hearing the voice, the still small voice that's calling out over there. You receive Torah through that. And the wilderness is sort of everything together, that cacophony of voices. It's not the love, and it's not the water. It's the experience of life. It's the actual thing that happens. It's like the history. It's like history. What happens? These little details of this or that or this and then this crazy thing. That is the book of Bamidbar. It's called In the Wilderness in Hebrew. The fourth book of the Torah is called In the Wilderness. And that's the revelation that happens in the wilderness. And it's basically like a just banging around, lost in the wilderness, going around in circles, camping one place, camping another place. Each one of these very, very, very particular details of the way life plays out, with each one of its very, very particular details, you can learn something from that. Not in like the elemental thing or the unknown, but in the very details of life, like the name of the store you went to, or the fact that you picked up that book today and not the other one, or that your mother called. You know, these little details you also find a path in life through just by the amazing occurrences that happen. And that in Bamidbar, it talks about all that. So I give us all a bracha that we should be able to find the Torah of water, that we should be able to see it as a cleansing like the mikvah, to be able to go into the unknown and to go into the potential and to realize that it's not a fall or a decay, but that it's a return to the desire to just be, and that we can bring like a pail of water out of that and give water to the thirsty, and we should be able to start with ourselves.
Amen. Thank you.
Any thoughts that came up?
Just want to see if there's a possibility of accessing the other shirim.
Oh yeah, prostoncenter.org/Torah. They have the rest. The rest of them are there. And then next week I'm going to do one on the Torah of trees. And then I think we're going to have the soil as opposed to rocks, but we'll do that too. But the next one will be the Torah of trees.
For me, what's kind of like doesn't make sense is, how do you always refer to Hanukkah as Torah once it wasn't mentioned in the Bible at all, and it's not really halachic holiday, or it is?
It's a great question. So the Rambam, which is Maimonides, who's the, by the way, this class is over, but I'm happy we can keep talking. But Maimonides, if Rabbi Akiva is the rabbi of rabbis, and Moshe is the prophet of prophets, Maimonides became the codifier of codifiers. So there's no one, unfortunately, almost nobody can mess with Maimonides, because he's like the Torah of fire. He's so clear and compelling that I actually have been like, okay, that's enough. Like, I'm not going to be able to win because you're a lot smarter than me, but I don't want to get totally swallowed alive by your ideas. Because once you mess with him, his knowledge is just so clarified. But he's actually very radical, and he's doing a lot of wild, radical readings of Torah. One of them is that there's earlier compilations of mitzvot, and Rambam, he's like totally the top of the mountain. He's a complete rationalist. He's very mystic also, but he sees things in a very rational way, and oh, thank you so much. So he sees things in a very radical way, and one of them is that he says that Hanukkah is not part of the Torah, and he says it's just a rabbinic thing. But in the Gemara, it says that we were celebrating Hanukkah since earliest man. It says that in the Gemara, and everyone else does, and we also do it, and we were always doing it way before the Maccabees, which is the story of Hanukkah that gets laid on top of it, is the story of the Maccabees. But the Gemara says that's not when we started celebrating Hanukkah. We were celebrating Hanukkah since earliest man. So when the Jews were in Egypt, they were already celebrating Hanukkah. So how could Maimonides say that is a rabbinic addition, and it happened in the time of the Maccabees, to celebrate the Maccabees, when earliest man and other people, other tribes aside from Jews, are also lighting candles at that time? But Maimonides is so rational that he just goes, it doesn't make sense, because you can't say that there's a holiday that was given in the time of Moshe about something that happens in 2,000 years later, or 1,000 years later, right? So he's being very rational about it. But it's earlier codifiers included Hanukkah as part of the early tradition. And Maimonides says that makes no sense. That's crazy. It's wrong. I don't know why they would do that. And so he removes it and he makes it into a rabbinical thing. But but at least the way I'm telling the story, it sounds like he's making a mistake. It sounds like he just can't come to terms with the fact that something is not working out rationally for him, and that there was an earlier tradition that was as old as the Torah, and people were celebrating Hanukkah because that's the darkest time of the year and that's when you light candles. It didn't have to do with the Maccabees, but it was original, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same thing as like, why celebrate the wine at that exact moment, right? So if you look at this thing again, this exact whole thing. The indigenous drink of the tribe of Judah is the grape, is wine. Every time Judah is ever mentioned, he's drinking wine, and the whole entire tribe. And when the Jews fought off the empire and regained their tribal independence, the first thing they did was to make a coin to show that they were in charge and not the Roman Empire. And they stamped it with nothing but a grape leaf. And that would be enough to let everyone know the Jews are back. Not a Jewish star, not a Hebrew letter, just a grape leaf would let everyone know, Judah is back. It's that close to the culture. And this whole thing here is actually also a celebration of the grapes. So the holiday of love, Av, is the time where you go into the vineyard and everyone dresses in white and people pick out their lovers, right? But it's the same time of the going to the vineyard. And this time is the time where you burn the wood. And this time is the time where you're clipping the vines. And here in Tishrei is where literally the wine is going into the vat, right? So in the same way that you are going into the water, into the vessel, the wine gets poured into the vat here, and then it sits in the very bottom of the depths in the ground, right? Because you bury the wine into the ground. And then here's where it's going to come out. And the new year of these little grapes are going to start ripening and going like this. So right here is where you drink wine. It's like the first time where like, okay, now it's coming out of the vat, coming out of the ground, and you're going to drink your wine. So to have the idea that that Jews weren't drinking wine in Adar, right? Just because it's talking about a story about Purim, about Queen Esther. And so the Rambam, being rational, says, oh, it can't be an earlier Jewish tradition because it's talking about Esther, and Esther happened later. He's also doing the same thing, right? You know what I mean, David? He's also just saying that there's this other story there that is laying on top of an older story. And because
I got it. It's like, what do you define as Hanukkah, actually?
Yeah.
Like, do you think it's the story of the Maccabees, or there's a earlier primal things that we're celebrating there?
Right. And that's the idea that everything that happens in life is on this natural cycle. And so it's amazing that at the moment where down here, where this is where the olives are pressed here, and this is where the end of the olive harvest is here. It's the tree that's the latest, and the um, the olives are the earliest, and sorry, the almonds are the earliest, and the olives are the latest. Here, at the very end of the olives thing, is the holiday of olive trees and olive oil, and essential things that are on the bottom of the year. And it's amazing that the Maccabees, historically, with the miracle of oil, that it happened on that exact time, right? So therefore, that story gets laid on there because it's like the details of life are modeling that deep circle. Do you know what I mean? And this moment of being in exile and being almost wiped out, and then being saved, which is the thing of Purim, it happened in that month. But the nature of that thing that happened was so perfectly coordinated with that month in the cycle. And it's that then all of a sudden, that story, when that happens, oh yeah, okay, so let's lay that on top of there, because it's the sort of, it's the source of creation speaking again, that it would happen so clearly, that it would be, you know, the things are aligning, so it gets put on there.
This was a great answer, because I struggle with with Purim and Hanukkah and Tu B'Shvat in this sense, and now I can, like, we can say that they're both right. Both the Rabbinicon, the Rabbinians, and the Maimonians.
Yeah, if Maimonides would just give his opinion and not say that other people are wrong, then that would be fine. But I love him, but he doesn't have nice things to say about the older irrational people. You know, that's the annoying part. He goes, "What fools!" You know, how could they say something so crazy like that? And it's like, Jennifer asked about what's the Omer counting again. The Omer counting is the this period between Nisan and Sivan, where the grain harvest is coming in, and you're counting the days to make sure it doesn't rain, and you're also counting the ripening of those grains, and you're also counting your rational growth, your mind and your knowledge of self growing, not decaying, not letting go, but actually getting definition, growing up.
By the way, in the Torah of the fire, you shared with us a midrash about like how Adam got a fire, right? Something. Is
Yeah.
this the roots of the original Hanukkah? Like
No, that's the roots
stirring
of
this?
Havdalah. That's the roots of
Ah,
Havdalah.
that.
And it also has to do with Hanukkah too. It also has to do with Hanukkah, but it's most primarily Havdalah because it's the separation between light and darkness. And again, I'm actually feeling embarrassed that I even teased the Rambam or Maimonides, but I'm just pointing out that there was an earlier codifier called Halachat Gedolot, who has a beautiful way of explaining things, and it's beautiful to read. There's 613 there's 613 mitzvot. And the earliest explanation of that, it says that there's 613 mitzvot, like commands. And the earliest explanation says that it's because there's 248 parts of your body and 365 days of the year. So if you just let that sit for a second, it's like, all right, I don't even want to say, what does that mean? What do you think? What comes up for that comment?
5 days, and what do you say? How many parts of body?
There's 248 parts of the body, organs of the body, and there's 365 days. So that equals 613 mitzvot. But what is it trying to say by that? Are you saying it's surprising that it's solar?
Yeah, that it's that the calendar that they used in is based around the sun.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's like every part of the body deserve its Torah. It's a mitzvah, and every day it's a mitzvah. It's kind
Yeah,
of like coming back to like serving and protecting the earth. Like you are the earth too. You protect every single part of body you have. You protect every day. This is like
yeah. It's like you have a mitzvah in every part of your body. Is like it says that there's a angel that is telling each and every leaf on a tree, grow, 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 grow. It's like every part of your body is getting a mitzvah, and every single day it's renewed. So it's like how to be this body in the next day, how to be this body in the next day, how to be this body in the next day. And as you move through that year, those are all that's the commands. How to be your body in time, and that's 613 mitzvot, right? That's like the most. That's the earliest version of that. But then there's also because there's a way of dividing it, which is 365 negative commands and 248 positive commands, which is of course Jewish because there's just so many more no's than yeses. That's the fun part, and and that's another way of reading it. And it's not like that's wrong. Like there's a wrong. That's the wrong tradition. One of them is the right tradition, but there is that earlier tradition.
so there are more no's than yes.
Yeah, a lot more no's.
It's kind of like the wisdom that comes from the darkness. It's like the wisdom that comes from the no.
Yeah,
No light. So it's the
it's
light
the
that comes
Jewish
from
no.
no
No,
light.
no, 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 no. It's like this. It's like this. If you're, it's so archaic that it's like Bronze Age curmudgeon saying no to everything. It's like someone in the Bronze Age going, you say, "Hey, I invented this." Nope. I invented. Nope. What about wool and linen mixed together? Nope. How about the? Nope. 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 Like it's just saying no to everything. Because that's like Shabbat is like the big no, like don't do anything. Because, but at its most essential thing is that the 6 days of creation are life itself. The trees, the earth, the water, the sea, the sky, the light and the darkness, and then like, what about something else? And then the old man or something says, "What do you mean? No, we don't want something else. This is good. You have to come to terms with this." Like no, they'll make some new thing like protect this. That's the at its core, that's what the no is coming from. Like, but I have a new idea. And then the snake is saying, yeah, but there's like there's you're not supposed to just say no. Like there's something you should say yes to. Like it's like, you know, does that make is it the snake is like there like yeah, you should try your crazy thing that looks like a pretty bad idea because there's like some goodness that is going to come from that which is deeper than excluding the no is essential for clarifying the yes. Yeah, it's like Rodin said that when he came to do a sculpture he doesn't actually sculpt the sculpture, he just gets rid of all the stuff that doesn't belong. right? Like he looks at the rock and he's like, no, 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 no. Ah. And he actually didn't make the sculpture. He just said no to all the stuff that wasn't a sculpture. The Kutzker said that he said our job in life is not to write, it's to erase, which is the same kind of thing. It's like it's
And
not
you
to write some new thing, it's just to erase all the stuff that is not you. I love everyone
good
here.
drawing, it's actually like making splitting spaces rather than actually like you're just splitting spaces, chunks of spaces.
Oh, that's so interesting, because that was a direct sort of act of like the creator, right? Because creation is initially made by an erase, right? Everything is so potential and everything is just amorphous, and then the first thing is like make a division, like erase. So now you have two things because you erased that possibility. So now there's something there. And then you erase another. It's called, in Kabbalah, it's called cuts. Making cuts. Like slash and make cuts in this big blob
In
of
Hebrew,
potential.
cuts?
What?
In Hebrew, cuts?
Yeah, like a sphere.
Ah, yeah. Yeah, definitely. All right. Good night, everyone. Good night, Psachyah.
Good night. Good night, everyone.
אני ואתה נשנה את העולם.